It's not even week one, and we're asking this question about Florida State. Can Florida State save its season? Okay, for all of us on the outside of Tallahassee, you might have laughed a little bit, but for us Clemson fans, we know what it feels like to go into a season with hope and we feel like we have the world at our fingertips. And after a few seasons that wasn't really Clemson-esque, if that's a word, we felt like we had a chance to go into the 4-team playoff. And then Labor Day happened in Durham, a 3-touchdown loss. And besides the weird timing of playing on a Monday night in front of 400 fans and 300 of them were Clemson, our season was dashed. Florida State kind of feels that way, possibly. Talk about that. I have my buddy, TJ. TJ, thanks for joining me, my friend.
How you doing, man?
I am doing great. Double fries, hold slaw, double fries. Sorry, I always get that turned around, TJ. I'm sorry.
You should not be doing nobody should be doing like if you like coleslaw, it's fine, but nobody should ever really be doing double slaw. Like there's never a situation where like I need double coleslaw ever.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. Except for a few old ladies. Old ladies that they probably like that. So I'm going to be talking with TJ here in just a second. Welcome to the channel, everyone. I hope you'll subscribe. You know what? Because it's free. If you like what I'm doing here, you see, I not only talk about these guys, I talk about these other teams because, hey, I enjoy it. It's always fun. Drop a line in here to let me know. Let me know if you're a first timer or if you've returned for more torture. TJ, bringing you back on here. You went to Dublin. You actually went to Dublin. Yeah. Tell me, how was Ireland?
Yeah, it was phenomenal. See if I can move this the right way. So the bottle that's over this shoulder, the tall one, is a bottle of Jameson that was from the distillery, and it says Knowles in Dublin 2024. So that's kind of a cool pickup that we decorated the background with. Spent $70 on a bottle of liquor that I'll never open. So talk about wasting money. But yeah, it was phenomenal, right? Like obviously we'll talk about the game in a minute, and even the game was done really, really well. And I, I'll say this: if you're a fan of Clemson or any other team, and you have a chance to do something like this, like go do it, right? I have no regrets. Obviously, I wish they'd have played better. I wish they'd have won, all that, right? Like, but you're going to be a college football fan. You're going to watch your team win a lot. You're going to watch them lose a lot. That's fine. The game was put on super well. Being in Dublin was awesome. Like I've said this probably a million times now, but I love an Irish bar. Just like the dimly lit and loud live music, whether it's a guitar or violin or whatever. Guinness beer, right? Like it tastes better over there, but still always great. I love the vibes at an Irish bar. And then you have like 400 of them within like a 2-mile radius, square distance walking that you can get to. And so it's like you drink a beer and go to the next bar, and you drink a beer and go listen to more music, and you drink a beer, so it was phenomenal. The, Guinness factory was great. The Jameson stuff was cool. We went to London for a few days, which was a lot of fun. And we had an absolute blast. And then you're there. I mean, Clemson fans, imagine, Tampa in 2016, or I guess 2017 in January it was, but like, imagine, just taking over a city. And so you're in another country, but then you're also like, with 25,000 of your closest friends. Right. And so it was so cool. Again, if you're a fan of any team, they announce these things like 18 months early. So we already know what next year's is. I bet by February, they'll announce what the year after's is. If you're a fan and you're going to be playing in something like this, like start saving up, because I could have never afforded it last second, but we bought our tickets like 18 months out. And then we bought our plane tickets like 12 months out. And then we bought the hotel. So find a way to get there, because it was the coolest experience ever to go there. I've been to Clemson. I've been to LSU. I've been to a bunch of different places and watched the Knowles play, but to do it out there was pretty ridiculously fun.
Everybody, TJ from Double Fries knows Slaucy. I got it right that time and didn't mess up. He's joining us here. He's a big Florida State. The big Florida State guy, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Again, I was telling you this beforehand, but I told you, I said, TJ, it is easy for everybody to blame DJ. DJ is low hanging fruit in this. This is stop number 3 in 3 years. A guy who was one of the highest rated quarterbacks in the country. Things didn't really go well at Clemson for him. That also is part of a weird time at Clemson that is still, there, and DJ is gone. That's another subject, another time, another video. But the low-hanging fruit is to blame this loss on DJ. Do you think that is fair, or do you think that this was completely a team effort?
Yeah, DJ is not without blame. I just don't know that I can get to a point where I say it's like all DJ's fault, right? And that's kind of where, yeah, I agree with you. It was a team effort. I thought coaching was poor. I thought DJ struggled at times. I'd put him as like the fifth or sixth biggest problem on Saturday. I thought the offensive line play wasn't great. I thought that I thought the receivers played fine for what they were. I don't think our receivers are world beaters by any means, and so I'm not going to blame them, but I also think like there's limitations with the receivers in the tight end room. I thought the defensive line was pretty bad. I thought the linebackers were the worst I've seen at Florida State since I don't even remember, like maybe 2016, 17, 18, and that Willie Taggart kind of time frame. So yeah, DJ was not, was an issue, right? Like he was one of many issues, but I mean, I'd put offensive line, I'd put defensive line, I'd put linebackers, and I put coaching all ahead of him. And then maybe, I'll say the fifth biggest problem on Saturday was probably DJ. But yeah, I'd put a lot of stuff in front of blame. Yeah, there's a lot of blame to go around, and it was a team effort, a team, we did this together, guys. But yeah, I'd blame a lot of other things before I, went straight to DJ.
Sure. And I mean, if anyone went to YouTube after that Florida State loss, typed in Florida State, Georgia Tech, I mean, like out of 100, this is just a guesstimate, but I think I'm close to being accurate. Out of 100 videos, probably 90 of them had him front and center. And yes, he's the starting quarterback for an elite football team, a historically great football team, of course, bringing his recent history with him. A lot of eyes are on him. A lot of eyes are on you guys after last season. But I felt like that, hey, this is like a very irresponsible way to try to diagnose what went wrong with Florida State. Now, for people who are just talking about it, etc., okay, that's fine. It's easy to get clicks. You and I do that from time to time. But if you're really troubleshooting for Florida State, DJ gets the blame. But as you said, there were other factors. What were some of the, like you talked about, he ranked number 5. Give me your top 2, top 3, and just go a little in depth of what shocked you as an insider that you're like, this is Norvell's team? Like, will you go into that and go a little more granular if you don't mind?
Yeah, and I'll start with DJ too, though. Like, I think that the reason you see those narratives and the reason you say that is because people like to confirm their own biases, right? And we do that. We're lazy, right? Like, as human, like we just are. And so people like to say, if they said all year or all offseason, well, Florida State's going to suck because they got DJ, then if Florida State sucked in a game, like, well, it was DJ, like it was his fault. So it's easier to say that, right? And it's coming off the heels of Florida State getting snubbed from the playoffs because they were missing their quarterback. And so it's really easy to say, well, new quarterback, this team, see, they're the same. They're the same team that got beat by Georgia by 60, whatever. It's easy to confirm those biases. Yeah, I thought Norvell was, I don't know if I'm putting this number 1. My biggest 2 issues were the front 7 on defense was worse than I thought. Now, I thought the defensive line would be really, really good. I was on record saying I thought the defensive line was one of the best in the country, if certainly one of the best in the conference, up there with Clemson and Miami's. They didn't play very well. They didn't play very well at all. And that shocked me. And then the linebacker play was really bad. And I didn't expect it to be good by any means. Like, I thought the linebackers were the weakness of the team and certainly of the defense, because I still like our secondary. I think the line will come around. But I thought the linebackers were so much worse than I could have ever thought. And at times, when you get complimentary football and you get the defensive line to, if they're not getting pressure or they're not getting in the backfield or they're not darting through gaps, if they take on their blocks or they can take on 2 guys and the linebackers fill their holes, the defensive line doesn't get crapped on, right? But if the defensive line is doing their job and the linebackers miss or don't fill their holes correctly or take wrong angles, then the running back gets 7-8 yards until the safety gets to him. And you say, well, defensive line can't get anybody. And really, maybe the defensive line wasn't so bad, but both units just, they weren't getting any kind of pressure. They weren't getting through. The linebackers were really, really bad. And there have been some adjustments on the depth chart already. So I expect that to get better. But that front 7, I wasn't expecting much from the linebackers, but again, they were worse than I could have ever thought. The defensive line that was so touted as being one of the best in the country, best in the conference, best in the state of Florida, whatever. I mean, I don't think that's the case anymore, right? Like, I need to see a lot more for them before I'm going to even put them close to Clemson's or Miami's at this point. And so that unit, that front 7 was really bad. And then I think coaching was a huge huge question mark. I mean, we had a linebacker, and I'm not going to try and disparage a kid, but we had a linebacker in that wasn't very good last year. We got a lot of fall camp praise, and he had like the second most snaps of any linebacker, and he'd make one tackle, like as a linebacker, right? And he wasn't close. Florida State fans will know immediately who I'm talking about. And again, I'm not trying to disparage a kid because I'm sure he's a great kid, but he was falling down all over the place. He wasn't close. He was taking wrong gaps. He was taking wrong angles. He was getting juked out of his shorts. Like, and they asked the defensive coordinator after, like, I don't think they mentioned him specifically, but the question was like, why didn't you play the guy behind him more? Like, why didn't this guy get many snaps? And they were just like, we kind of got caught up in the flow of the game. Like, there was a weird flow to the game, which there was, right? There were only 7 possessions each way, and that's fine. But yeah, you can't say that. Like, I mean, that might be the answer, but you gotta be better than that as a defensive coordinator. So I thought the coaching on defense was bad. I thought the coaching on offense was bad. I think Norvell thought that he could smash mouth football Georgia Tech. And from intent purposes, he should have been able to. Like, it's still kind of weird to me that they weren't able to run the ball at all. But you saw what they did that first drive. I mean, they're so lit, and they go down, they get the 2-point conversion even, and they run right down Georgia Tech's throat. And Georgia Tech basically said, okay, we're going to bring everybody in the box. We're going to put 7 or 8 in the box and make DJ beat us. And Norvell continued to try and run the ball, short passes. DJ, they show the stat, and it's like a troll punchline now. He's 12 of 13 or 12 of 14, whatever, and he's got like negative half yards, air yards, and it's like, well, those are run plays, I mean, they're well designed out to the edge run play, but like if you're throwing the ball less than a yard down the field, those are run plays. And so they never forced Georgia Tech to get out of that box until late in the game. And then DJ was good late in the game. Like he did complete a 3rd and long. He did complete 2 4th and longs when you had to have it to tie the game up. And so it almost just felt like they handicapped DJ so much. And again, DJ was not without fault. But if they'd have just trusted him a little bit, if they'd have maybe just let him play a little bit more wide open in the first half and take some shots and really push the ball down the field, maybe they would have gotten Georgia Tech out of that 7-8 man box. But Georgia Tech basically just loaded up the box and said, hey, you're not going to run on us. And Norvell was pretty stubborn and tried to continue to do it. Now, I don't know why. I don't know if he just, the first drive gave him too much confidence, or if the game truly did just get away because it was shorter and obviously went really quick with both teams running the ball a lot. But yeah, that was, to me, the biggest 2 problems. Again, front 7 on defense, and then the coaching decisions, both offensively and defensively, were just really weird.
Let's talk about DJ there. I believe that if you're going to put a player on the field, just like you were referencing this linebacker, if you're going to put a player on the field, it's kind of like hiring somebody for a job. Yeah. Trust the hire. And if you can't trust the hire, either you're a control freak or you're terrible at hiring. So trust the hire, let them do their job. A quarterback's job is to get the ball down the field. Yeah. And we have these plays, and we've seen this over the past few years because trying to get numbers on the edge, get the ball to the playmaker in space, and that is all contingent upon guys being able to block at the wide receiver position as well. With that said, how much of this do you look at, and I'm looking at the Clemson coaches as well for this, because DJ was there, they did the same thing with him. They've done the same thing with Klubnik. This is not a Florida State or Clemson thing. This is something that we're seeing across the country in college football. How much of this do you think that people are just buying into the quick pass out into the flat, and I'm just waiting on my wide receivers to throw a block, but really not factoring in if they can actually block? And maybe it's just lazy play calling. Do you think that is something that's not only impacting Florida State, but impacting other schools like Clemson as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, like, we've gone to that in football a little bit, right? Like you've got that with the Chiefs, right? Like Chiefs will throw it out. Well, I guess he's down with Miami now, but they used to do that all the time with Tyreek Hill. But you know what they also do with Tyreek Hill? Sometimes they send that dude way down the field because he was faster than everybody else, and they would use his speed, and he'd make a double move instead of taking the 3-yard pass. He'd go deep. And so I think coaches, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say lazy, right? Like maybe that's one way to kind of look at it or interpret it. But I think that it's more likely that coaches want to limit mistakes because of how big turnovers are. You remember Jameis the year after he won the Heisman, he had like 15 or so interceptions. Like he was turning the ball over a ton. And so I think they, even like if you have a supreme talent like that, you want to really like limit mistakes. And so you just make one read and go. And defensive lines are so good with stunts and twists and pressures and everything else that I think that I don't know if it's lazy, but it's just, you're not letting guys go out there and play ball, right? Like you're almost overdoing it. Like when they got away from that, the headset went down for Georgia Tech halfway through the game. And so Florida State, by the rules, had to turn theirs off too. And it seemed like when Norvell wasn't in his ear, like controlling every single, like it almost looked like he played more free in the second half. Now, granted, they only had 2 or 3 possessions in the second half because of how long they took. But man, that's when he completed the couple of fourth downs. That's when he completed the third down. So I just think his coach is like doing too much. And I get the idea of like, man, get the guy, get speed in space, right? Get your playmakers the ball out on the edge and let them do work. But you're allowed to throw the ball downfield. You're allowed to take some shots and try. And when Florida State did, they were somewhat successful. Like DJ was pretty good over the middle. I think he was like 7 of 8 or 5 of 7 or 7 of 9 throwing intermediate. He was bad throwing the ball deep. He was pretty good short. And then he was pretty decent intermediate. Let him throw the ball 8 yards down the field. It doesn't always have to be a bomb, which he wasn't very good at on Saturday. Like DJ is not perfect either, but let him throw the ball over the middle. Let him throw for 7 or 8 yards. And if an interception happens, right? Your defense has to step up and pick you up in certain spots, right? An interception 20 yards down the field is slightly worse than a punt, 40 yards down the field, right? And so take some chances. You're going to get paid off for it. But yeah, it feels weird to me that that's kind of the MO. Now, maybe Norvell just thought like, man, DJ's not ready yet, but maybe we ground and pound through Georgia Tech. We ground and pound through Boston College, and then we get that bye week and we'll install more stuff by the time we get to Memphis, right? And in a perfect world, that might have worked fine. And they almost got away with it. Like this was a tie game with 5 seconds left. It's not like they got blown out. And I don't think Norvell cares about covering the spread, right? I think that he thought, man, just get out of here with a win. No big deal. And they were close, but it came back to bite him. And I think if he had to do over again, he would not have been as conservative or, as timid with his play calling around DJ.
As much as it's easy for people to pick at Florida State, just like when Clemson lost last year, everybody's laughing their brains out. And hey, it's college football. We're having fun. I get it. It is what it is. But let's go to a strategical point of view. How much of this that Georgia Tech actually got a lot better and that Brent Key is setting himself up to be potentially ACC Coach of the Year if his team has actually progressed as much as it seems they have? I mean, I think Georgia Tech is actually an improved team. What's your thoughts on seeing them in person, how they approached you guys, all the way from scheme, adjustments, and just playability?
Yeah, I mean, you look at their schedule, right, and what they could possibly do. They wanted to improve on their 7-6 record from last year, and they play Georgia State next. Certainly, Florida State fans are gonna, kind of be cheering for Georgia Tech the rest of the way to say like, see, that wasn't that bad of a loss. But they play Georgia State, that's a win. They play at Syracuse. I'd be pretty surprised if they lost that. They play VMI, that's a win. So they'll be 4-0. They got to go to Louisville, which is kind of tough. And then I think it's, Duke, Carolina. I think Georgia Tech should beat both those teams. It gets tougher late. They got to play Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, and Miami in back-to-back weeks. And then obviously NC State and Georgia to finish it. So it definitely gets tough late. But I mean, is there a team in this conference that they can't beat on that schedule? Like, I know that some of them are going to be tougher. I know that Miami's really hyped. I know that Notre Dame's hyped. I know that NC State, Louisville are tough games. I don't expect them to beat Georgia late. But yeah, I do think they're an improved team. The one thing I'll say is they were able to catch Florida State off guard. I don't think they'll be able to catch Miami off guard. I don't think they'll be able to catch NC State off guard. I think other teams will take Georgia Tech a little more seriously because of what they just did. And they'll say like, okay, well, here's what Georgia Tech wants to do. They want to melt the clock. They want to run the ball a ton. They don't want to make Haynes King. They never had to put the ball in harm's way because they just ran the ball down our throats. I think other teams will bring guys up into the box. It was a mystery to me why Florida State didn't do that. And so I don't, Georgia Tech 8-4, maybe 9-3, maybe I'd say 7-5, 8-4 still kind of where you're at. I think they're a much improved team. I think they also caught Florida State napping. Florida State didn't adjust well. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they dropped to Louisville or they dropped to Notre Dame or they dropped to Miami or NC State. So I could certainly see them losing 5 or so games, but it wouldn't surprise me if they beat any of those teams either. And I think Brent Key is a really good coach. And if he can get to 8-4, and that would probably be 3 conference losses, or maybe that'd be 2 conference losses and a loss to Notre Dame and Georgia. If they go 8-4, and what'd that be? That'd be 6-2 in the conference. I would say that he's probably pretty close up there to, being your ACC Coach of the Year. Now we'll see how other teams play. Like if Mario goes undefeated in the conference, I mean, they're going to give it to him because of Miami market and stuff. But yeah, Brent Key's doing a phenomenal job. I need to see it like, again, I think they win the next 3. I need to see it when they go on the road to Louisville. I think that's the litmus test. Like, can you go up against a really, really good, really well coached Jeff Brom team? I think that, you know, you look at the top coaches in the league. You're looking at Dabo, you're looking at Norvell, you're looking at Brom, you're looking at, you know, Lashley, Brent Key, somewhere in there, right? Those are Doran's up there. Mario's a good recruiter, but it hasn't proven on the field. So, like, can you beat multiple of those really good coaches? Because if you beat both teams that were in the ACC championship last year, like, that's pretty strong. And in your first 2 ACC games of the year, or I'm sorry, Syracuse is in there too, but I think Freddie Brown's a good coach. If you beat both those teams to start the year, I think that you're, you know, Brent Key's kind of a shoe-in for coach of the year if they can put enough wins together on the back end.
Yeah, and if he does well and he is extremely competitive, especially in the games that we're like, man, they should lose, and maybe even pull out a few of those wins, I'll be shocked if he is still the coach at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And we can leave it at that. Let's talk about Boston College. You're playing on Monday night, and I'm sorry, I still have PTSD from last year, but our whole Monday night debacle. You're playing at home. You're playing against Boston College. Bill O'Brien, a guy who had success at Penn State after all hell broke loose there with the whole Paterno thing, goes on to the NFL. He does well. He had his time with Bama. He can coach. He can coach, and he can coach in different environments. This is his first year. I was kind of shocked that they hired him. But this is his first year with Boston College. They're returning, 17 players-ish. But you guys have already lost. You got popped in the mouth, not hard, like you said. It was a 3-point walk-off win. I mean, it's not like you got the crap beat out of you and, you know, a 3-touchdown loss. What's the approach to this game? What's the approach to this game as far as your scheme? You're talking about some changes in the lineup. You'll just go through that and just talk about what you expect to see against BC.
Yeah, I do think they'll play better, right? I think Georgia Tech had a game plan that they, first of all, executed to perfection, right? They didn't have any massive mistakes. They had a couple of fumbles that they were able to fall back on. But they had a game plan to limit Florida State's possessions, and Florida State's game plan played directly into that. And so Florida State was basically Florida State's game plan was essentially like exactly what Georgia Tech wanted. And so I just think that stylistically they'll match up a little bit better with Boston College. I think, you know, Boston College first year under a new regime, that's a benefit to Florida State for sure. I think Florida State playing the game already is a benefit, right? Like you already got time to adjust. You already know where your weaknesses are, and maybe you can put a Band-Aid or a duct tape or just whatever on top of those things to get you through to the bye week, to get you to a group of 5 team in Memphis, which is a good group of 5 team, but a team you certainly shouldn't be losing to in a few weeks. So yeah, I think Florida State will play better. They'll adjust. They'll fix some things. I think it's really hard. We talk all the time about halftime adjustments and all that, but I think that is hard at times. But I think it's a lot easier week to week, right? And so, hey, here's what we did poorly last week. Here's what we can do. You know, I think Thomas Castellanos is a incredibly dynamic athlete who is faster than Haynes King, and so they certainly need to have their head on a swivel and be ready to go. But I don't think he's as good of a quarterback as Haynes King is, and so I think you maybe gain some athleticism. You probably aren't as good of a quarterback going up against him. I think you have a chance for more turnovers. I don't think Boston College's offensive line is as good. Like, I think the heroes of as good as Haynes King was and as good as the running back Haynes was as well, I think the heroes of that game were Georgia Tech's offensive line. And I don't think Boston College matches up the same way. They do have a really good tackle, but I think really outside of him, they're not as good of a unit. And then defensively, they're not great either, right? And we thought that about Georgia Tech going into it, but I think Boston College, Florida State will be able to move the ball as well. So I think Florida State will adjust. I think the mindset is like, I mean, it better be desperation. You lose this game, you're not going to the playoff. Like, there's just no way. I mean, if enough chaos broke out and everybody had 2 or 3 losses and you somehow got to the title game on a tiebreaker in the ACC, and then you win that. Yes, obviously you could make it, right? If there's enough chaos, maybe you could sneak in it at 10-2. But for all intent and purposes, you lose to Georgia Tech and Boston College. You ain't beating Miami. You ain't beating Clemson. You probably won't. You're going to beat SMU. You're not beating Notre Dame. Florida's a question mark. And so this idea that you could lose this game and have any chance the rest of the way is ludicrous, right? And so, yeah, it should be desperation. It should be like, hey, man, we got to play like our season depends on it, because it does. You lose this game, and whether it's DJ's fault or not, your season's over. You might as well just go to the young guy and get him ready for next year. And so, yeah, it better be desperation. It better be like, this is an absolute must win, and we cannot take any chances. And I think that is what's going to happen. I think they're going to play a little bit better. I don't think everything's just going to be fixed overnight. We talked about tightening up the rotations. They rotated a ton on the offensive line. I didn't like that at all. I thought they should just stick with their top 5 and go with it. It seems like that's what they're doing this week. I think they moved that linebacker that I was talking about down to like second string. They moved another guy up. That should help some. They moved a safety that was starting down a little bit. They're going to go to a younger kid there as well. So little tweaks there. And then I think, I'm hoping that Norvell and the staff will coach a little bit better too, and just, trust DJ a little bit. I think, DJ's not perfect. He's not going to go out there and Jameis's first game, I think he threw like 19 of 21, and both incompletions were drops. And so, DJ's not going to do that, right? It's 25 for 27. DJ's not going to do that. And that's okay, right? He's going to have some mistakes. He's going to mess up some, but let him take some shots down the field. Let him kind of open it up and play a little bit. And I think they will play better, but I think the mood needs to be desperation, because if you lose it, the season's over.
Everybody, TJ from Double Fries No Slaw. I have a link to his channel right below this video. You hit on something I was going to ask you about here just a second ago. Let's just say that the offense is putting along. You're having too many close games. You're having too many close calls. Maybe you're winning the games, but you're sitting there going, oh my goodness, we could have lost these games. Kind of like the 3-point walk-off with Georgia Tech. Do we see, and I believe it's Glenn is your backup quarterback, correct? Do we see him? Do we see him come in and they look at DJ and say, hey man, this is school number 3. And I'm not getting personal with DJ here, but school number 3, we're not going to throw our any hopes that we have left under the bus because of you. Do you see them maybe replacing him or start splitting reps between he and Glenn?
Yeah, it's tough, because I think as long as they have a chance in the ACC, you'll see DJ in there. Now, what wouldn't surprise me is, now all this said, I don't think DJ was the major problem. So I don't think there's any real rush to try and replace him right now. And to me, it's not even like, to save your season, because I still think he's the most capable quarterback on the roster. Brock Glenn was a true freshman last year. He played in the ACC championship, and essentially we had to go to the Wildcat to win that game. And then Luke Kromenhawk is I think he was a 33rd overall player. So he's one short of being a 5-star. I think they really like him, but not ready to put a true freshman out there. And so, to me, I don't think there's any rush to go to DJ unless he's just playing incredibly poorly and he really regresses. The only time I go to DJ is like, say you beat BC, right? And then you beat Memphis and you beat Cal. So you're 3-1. And you go out to SMU and you drop that game to SMU. And so now you've got 2 conference losses and it's looking really bleak. I wouldn't start either one of those young guys against Clemson, but if you lose to Clemson and you're 3-3 after 6 games, there's 0 shot at the ACC championship. There's 0 shot at the playoff. To me, it wouldn't be about benching DJ because he's bad. Now, if he's bad, they should bench him. It would just be about, man, the season's over anyway. Let's see what the young guys got. Let's give them a little more time, a little more experience, just to get them ready for next year. Because at 3-3, and I'm not predicting they go 3-3, right? I actually think they win the next 4 games. And I think, no offense to Clemson, I think both those teams are 4-1 coming into Doak. Well, I guess you guys would be 3-1. You played one. Well, no. Do you have a bye early? Might be both teams are 4-1 or 3-1 or whatever that would be.
We would be if we win after the Georgia game out, it would be 3-1 going in.
Yeah, so I think both teams will come in, and then like that game will be huge, massively important, maybe even more for Florida State because they already have the conference loss. But so I do think Florida State wins the next 4. But if they drop one in there and then they drop to Clemson as well, because DJ doesn't play great. then I think it's not even about benching DJ. It's just about getting ready for next year. Now, that said, if Florida State loses 35-38 to Clemson and DJ has 5 touchdowns, I mean, they're not benching him at that point. Like, they're going to try and win as many games as they can for recruiting and everything else. But if he's just kind of still middling, Norvell doesn't trust him yet, I mean, you might as well get the other guys some reps.
TJ from Double Fries, no slaw. There is a link below the video. Click it, subscribe, let him know you've seen him on this channel. TJ, any closing thoughts? Anywhere else that we can connect with you online or in social media?
Yeah, so I've been doing some national stuff too. So if you want to see the Florida State stuff, Double Fries No Slaw. College Football Addiction is a national channel that I run, and I've done some Clemson stuff. Had you on there? We'll have you on there again soon. Maybe even tomorrow morning for our preview show. But that'll be fun. And so yeah, social media is just my name, TJ Pittenger, anywhere. And yeah, we have a good time. I'm excited to see Clemson this weekend. I'm actually driving up to Gainesville for the Gator Miami game as I make my way up to Tallahassee. And so I'll be watching the Clemson game on my phone as I drive like this in stop and go traffic up I-75. So excited to watch you guys. I am not one of these, losers. I'll just call it like it is, that cheers for a conference. Like, I don't really care about go ACC team. Yeah. But I mean, who doesn't want to see an upset? And Florida State fans don't hate Clemson fans like they hate Miami and Florida. So yeah, I mean, I'll be pretty outright and say, I want you guys to win. I'll be cheering for Clemson. I know it's tough. Trust me, we saw them last year and got the worst bowl loss in history, but I don't think it'll be that bad for you guys. But I know it's gonna be tough for Clemson, but I am certainly cheering for you guys to get it done. So yeah, check us out on College Football Addiction. If you hate the FSU stuff and you don't want to see me rant about the Noles, you can check us out on the national channel where I try and take at least one shade of garnet and gold glasses off.
Yeah, well, you do a great job. And if anyone has ever watched either one of his channels, he does a great job. He's very entertaining and he's a friend of the show. TJ, thanks for coming back on. Folks, I hope you'll subscribe. I hope you will support the channel, and it's free. So, it's all you're doing is just clicking with your thumb. I hope you'll do that. Drop a line in here and say hello. Drop a line to him. Folks, I look forward to seeing you this weekend. Clemson, Georgia, Florida State, Boston College on Monday. Y'all take care of yourself, and as always, go Tigers.